我以為會同佢一齊好耐，好似一架日滿油嘅飛機咁，可以飛好遠。點知架機中途轉站。
Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. I'm out in the backyard. Maybe you've seen this setting before. It's a really beautiful day out here in LA. I've got my bottle of water, and I've got my notebook, and I've got all my DVDs, and I'm ready to go. So what are we here to talk about today? Wong Kar-wai, Chungking Express, 1994. Many people consider this to be Listen in the Mood for Love, to be his ultimate masterpieces, and people will go back and forth on which one they prefer and why, but it really is considered one of his great films. I hadn't seen this movie in about 8 years. Last time I watched it, it was at the end of 2013 after I'd seen The Grandmaster. And it was such a joy to revisit this movie. I liked this movie more than I ever have before. I can't explain to you how much I loved watching this again, other than to say that I was just laughing and enjoying it the entire time and completely in awe of this film. And what I had remembered really about it was the kind of romanticism of it and the yearning of it. And I'd forgotten how funny it is and how human it is and how unique and interesting it is and how kind of just in love with the form of cinema it is. And it was just a joy to watch it again. So I'm really happy to be here to talk to you about it. I did watch the World of Wong Kar-wai box set version of it, which is somewhat controversial at this point, and I will talk about that briefly. Here's the spine of this bad boy, and I will show you the little space that it occupies within the set here. So if you haven't seen this before on the channel, this is the little book that houses the movies, and it opens up. This is from As Tears Go By. So this is the central kind of fold-out thing there, and the disc for Chungking Express is right here, sharing some real estate with Daisy Being Wild. You can see that. And then in the book, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, the book is not terribly substantial, but I think it's pretty cool. It's a very interesting format. It's really beautifully made. And it's got the notes from the filmmaker, which have been part of the whole controversy of this set. But here we go. So here's Chungking Express, as you can see. And then here's the little write-up about it and the cast and crew credits and stuff like that. So this film stars Takeshi Kaneshiro, Bridget Lin, Tony Leung, and Faye Wong. They're the four main roles. And I thought it looked incredible. I watched this on a 59-inch TV, and the other version of this film I have, I'll try to include footage from both the Blu-ray and this. This is the Rolling Thunder DVD in this video, so you can compare and contrast. But I thought it really looked fantastic. I did, and people have complained a little bit about it. I do not have the older Criterion Collection Blu-ray, which is out of print and is insanely expensive at this point. I had one opportunity to buy that for a decent price, and I passed on it. And the reason I passed on it actually was that I have a friend from grad school who that's one of his favorite movies ever, Chungking Express. He loves that movie so much, and I was And he had told me he was looking for that Criterion Blu-ray, so I was I should let him know that this person is selling it for what it's actually worth, not $300 or whatever. So I texted him, and he ended up buying it. It was $30. And I kind of rue the day, but at the same time, I'm happy that my friend ended up with that copy of that movie. So I thought it looked great, and I did see a video online where someone took footage from the older Criterion Blu-ray and ran it side by side with footage from the box set, and you can really, really tell the difference. When I was watching it, there were only 3 scenes where I was the colors look a little different than what I remember. One of them is the scene where they're in the market, and Tony Leung and Faye Wong, and she's got a basket of onions, and he's carrying them, and they're walking side by side. And it looked the colors just looked a little bit different there. The contrast, I don't know all the technical kind of terminology, but that scene, one of the scenes where Faye Wong is in Tony Leung's apartment, it was all in the second half of the film, and then the very ending scene, there's just the skin tones were a little bit different. And then when I saw this side-by-side comparison, it really seemed and again, I don't know the technical terms for this, but if you're messing with a camera and you're messing with the white balance, and the a white will change from very, very bright white, the color of paper, to almost a cream or an eggshell type color. That's what looks like is happening when you see the side-by-sides, because in the 2000, whatever, was it 2000? is it? No, it's not 2008. It's not that old. Is it whenever the last remaster was done? The whites in that release are like super white and like very bright and like an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, right? That you would come out of a printer. And in this newer version, the whites are more of like a cream color, and that to me, and like so like the skin tones are more pale in the older version, and they have more kind of like red and brown in them in this one, and so those are kind of like the colors are maybe richer and deeper in this one, and they're more like blanched out in the other one. Again, I don't know the technical terminology, but as I was watching it and seeing this side by side, that's kind of what I noticed. And I will put a link to the side by side in the description of this video so you can go and see that. In terms of the bonus features, if you're here for a review of the Blu-ray itself, there are 3 primary things on here. There's the trailer, which I think is the Block 2 distribution trailer, which I think is on the Block 2 YouTube channel. So just Google or YouTube search or whatever, Block 2 distribution, Wong Kar-wai trailers, excuse me. I'm learning his name is pronounced Wong Kar-wai, so I've been going back and forth in my videos because I only ever seen it in writing until relatively recently. And so I'm trying to correct my pronunciation, but I'm going back and forth in my videos. So the 3 main bonus features are there's an interview with Chris Doyle, who you know is a cinematographer for this film, and the interview is done in Cantonese, which is pretty cool. He's from Australia originally, but he's lived in Hong Kong for years and years and years. And so he goes around to like some of the locations of the movie, and it kind of seems like he's drunk. Like there's a part where they're at the California restaurant location, which you'll know if you've seen the film, and he starts talking to these people who are sitting at the table where the jukebox used to be. And so he goes up to them and he's like, oh, this is where we had the jukebox. And have you ever heard of Chungking Express? And he's kind of like these 3 women and he's like sort of flirting with them. And like the guy doing the interview actually has to like drag him away. It's pretty funny. But he talks about like the escalator that's right outside of Tony Leung's apartment. So Tony Leung's apartment in the movie is actually Chris Doyle's like real apartment that he still lives in, or was when they shot these interviews with him. So he shows that apartment, but he said it was really annoying to have them filming in his apartment because like they broke his fax machine and his phone wasn't working afterwards, and like they moved all this crap around and broke his furniture. But he talks about how that escalator to them really symbolized a meeting of like old Hong Kong and new Hong Kong, because there's a staircase and then next to it they built an escalator, and so you have like the older staircase and the newer escalator. And when you watch that film knowing that, you see like the McDonald's signs, the Coca-Cola signs, but then you see these really tight spaces and these old buildings and these alleyways, and you see that kind of juxtaposition between the old and the new that's really interesting in the film. So that's a really interesting interview. And then there's a 12-minute piece that's Wong Kar-wai mostly, but also with Chris Doyle in parts, going around Hong Kong. It's really cool, showing like here's the entrance to Chungking Mansions, and he goes in and he like shows you the shop where he bought the CD that has the music that they played in the section with the Indian characters at the beginning, which you'll be familiar with if you've seen the film. And he just shows like different locations where they shot stuff, and like the scene where Bridget Lynn's character shoots a couple people. Like he's like, oh, I really like this like intersection of these corridors, and I wanted to shoot something here, so he staged that scene here. And then him and Chris Doyle sitting down together talking about the movie and what they love about movies and what they were trying to do with this movie. And there's actually, I wrote down a really great quote from Wong Kar-wai from that section that I wanted to share with you because I thought it was really interesting. He also, this is not the quote that I wanted to share with you, but he said, I don't know what my style is. I thought that was really interesting. He's talking about how like when he made Days of Being Wild, he was going very slowly and deliberately and trying to be very like kind of stately in the style. And everyone was like, you make movies way too slow, you gotta hurry up. And then Ashes of Time took forever, so he's like, I want to make a fast movie. He made Chungking Express, and everyone was like, you're making movies too fast. And like stuff like that. And like he and Chris Doyle talked about how like Chris Doyle would put a bunch of filters on the camera, and so much so that it would be hard to focus. And so like some of like the more stylized stuff that came out of the movie, like slow motion segments or like weird kind of like motion blurs and swirls, were like accidents. It was like as they were trying to make this movie and they wanted to make a quick movie in Hong Kong that was about the city, there were kind of mistakes that happened that became part of the aesthetic of the film. So I thought that was really interesting. So the quote is, the only way I can make a film is if I know the people and the place, and I think I know Hong Kong well. And so that was kind of like, to me, that's like a really great philosophy of this movie, of this guy who's from Hong Kong who wants to make a movie about people in a place. And he's talked in other interviews, and I've talked about in videos here before, about how he can't write unless he knows the location and he knows the people. And those are the things that bring the film together, and then the story starts to come out of that. But he can't just sit down and write a plot. That's not the kind of thinker that he is. So, and then there's deleted scenes. So there's 3 deleted scenes, and each one comes with interviews with Wong Kar-wai about the scenes and why they were taken out and what they added to the film. And that's really interesting. One of the scenes is actually an entire kind of separate plot line that never ended up in the movie, but some of the shots from that segment are in the finished film, and they were like repurposed in this really interesting way. There's one of the deleted scenes that I actually think is really interesting character development, where you see, so if you're familiar with the film, Faye Wong keeps going into the Tony Leung character's apartment, and she puts these pills in like a bottle of vodka or something, and then you see him sleeping later. In a scene that's deleted, you see her putting sleeping pills in his coffee and talking about how she knows that he's heartbroken, and like how, you know, there's the voiceovers in these films, and it's like very romantic kind of voiceover, and a voiceover about like loneliness and longing, and she has like a voiceover talking about how it'll be better for him if he sleeps and stuff like that, and like she wants to help him find like peace and things like that. So it adds to the character development between those two, and I think that was really interesting. I mean, Wong Kar-wai actually says in one of the little interview clips there that Faye Wong is the most natural actor he's ever worked with, and it was just insane how she just like would get on camera, because, you know, she was a singer more than an actor, like a pop star, and that she would just get on camera and just be that character, like, and it was just completely effortless. And he said that Tony Leung actually has a lot of techniques that he brings to acting, and Faye Wong will be so unpredictable and so in the moment that Tony Leung's techniques didn't work, and he had to like find a new way of acting, and that I thought that was like really fascinating. So that's kind of my review of the Blu-ray. I think it's a great Blu-ray release. I thought the movie looked incredible. I know that there are people who disagree with me on that. You'll see some footage in here where you can make up your own mind on that point. And I thought the bonus features were really fantastic. There's no commentary in here. So people have discussed that there are these Tony Raines commentaries from Wong Kar-wai films that are incredible, and they're bummed that Criterion didn't include them. And I was thinking about that this morning as I was prepping this video, and it occurred to me that, you know, Wong Kar-wai was very heavily involved in the making of this set, right? And they're his movies, and that's a point we can argue until the cows come home, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, they're his movies, right? It makes sense to me that he would be like, he wouldn't want an audio commentary by some film academic or critic or whatever to be included, because if he's in charge of this set and he's presenting it to the audience, does he want some other person to give an authoritative commentary on what his movie is about? No. He'll want his interview to be in there, the DP's interview to be in there, and like, what else do you really need to understand the film other than your own relationship with the film, right? So that really does make sense to me. I'm not sure why he didn't want to record his own commentaries, because he speaks English really, really well. If you've ever seen interviews with him before, and I've met him before, and like he speaks English really well. It's interesting that he has no interest in doing that, but I understand why he wouldn't want to put those in here. And I know people are like, oh, well, for entertainment value or for the fans or whatever, but like, I do get that perspective. And I'm not saying that I know that that's why he didn't want it to be included, but Criterion has said that he explicitly told them he didn't want the older versions of the films included. He only wanted these newer versions where, like, you know, the color tones are a little bit different, aspect ratios change in Fallen Angels. I haven't gotten to that one yet. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but all the other ones have been great so far. So I think it'll be great. I'm excited. Maybe I'll end up eating my words in my next video. But so here are my impressions of this film. This movie really felt like the most direct continuation of As Tears Go By of any of his films. It has that novelistic narrative that I talked about in my video on Days of Being Wild. And here he pushes that even further, because in Days of Being Wild, it does come full circle at the end, with all the characters kind of meeting and coming together. And in this, that never happens. It's like two completely separate stories, but they're set around the same kind of places, and the characters bump into each other, and there are two characters who are cops, they have similar vocations, but it really is this kind of sense of like, here's this gigantic city, and here are all these spaces, and here are all the spaces you might not see behind those spaces, and it's almost like this kind of it's like an onion kind of thing where you're peeling off the layers, right? You're seeing all these different facets of a place, but everything is tied together by the loneliness of these characters. So what I would really say about this is, if you were to take that As Tears Go By, like Hong Kong kind of crime movie, because like I said, I see a lot of Scorsese influence, with the exception of Ashes of Time, obviously, in all of the films of his I've watched so far, and I see that again here. What I see here, though, even more than that, really, really pronounced, which I saw in Days of Being Wild a little bit, is Godard and Truffaut. Like, it's so reminiscent of Breathless and Band Apart in terms of it being a criminal movie, but it's about like the emotional romantic lives of the characters, and they have these existential voiceovers, and they're committing these crimes, and they're like killing people, and they're getting involved in like all these things, but they're dancing, and they're having sex, and they're falling in love with people, and they're having these kind of like conversations about literature, and it's all about the emotional lives of the characters, while the physical plots are about crime and violence and drugs and stuff like that. And that's kind of more the first half of the movie than the second half of the movie. But it reminds me, like, Godard is like the obvious, like the jump cut editing, the steady cam shots. Like, there's so much in here that reminds me of Godard. And it really is like if you took As Tears Go By and then you put that novelistic kind of narrative style on it, but then your primary cinematic influence is the French Nuit. The reason it reminds me of Truffaut is that Truffaut is, I think, much more of a romantic than Godard. And this is a very unashamedly romantic film. And like in Days of Being Wild, I find that the romanticism is very literary. Here, it's a very cinematic sense of romanticism with the music and the gazes of the characters looking at each other. Like when Fei Wong first sees the Tony Leung character come up on her like that, and you see in his face he's taking off his hat, and you know the music is playing California Dreamin', and it's a really like beautiful and unabashedly like emotional and romantic film, and it has this very, very fantastic sense of playfulness and silliness, and it's very funny while at the same time it's filled with all this longing and yearning. And if you've ever seen the film Shoot the Piano Player, which is this really amazing film by Truffaut, it's about these criminals really heavily influenced by film noir, but the voiceover is all about their internal lives and their romantic lives. And that really reminded me of this. There's another Truffaut film that's called The Soft Skin that I really, really love, where it's a film about two people having an affair. So it's essentially a melodrama, but it's shot with kind of like this Hitchcockian sense of formalism, so that you have the external language of cinema replicating the internal emotional turmoil of the characters. And I see influence from that too. And like Jules and Jim is like another obvious, the Truffaut film, like influence on this with the voiceover and the romantic lives of the characters and falling in and out of love and stuff like that. And the kind of like, they're like very kind of over the top, very movie moments to it. And Wong Kar-wai, I think in this movie really establishes his genius for creating memorable characters, and the way that he does that, this is really interesting to me actually, because I've been watching a lot of James Bond movies recently. James Bond has his like physical accoutrements, right? Like he's got his Walther PPK, and he's got the shaken not stirred, the martini, and he's got the Aston Martin, and all these little things that add up to you feeling like this is a unique character. And obviously the Sean Connery or whoever performance really helps, but here you've got the Takeshi Kaneshiro character, and he's got his thing with the pineapples, and his birthday is in May, and he was broken up with by a woman named May, and there's another woman named May that he's trying to go out with, and he's buying these pineapples that expire in May, and everything kind of revolves around this character quirk that he has, where he's this cop, but he's like in love with this, so he has this kind of dangerous violent job, but he's in love with this woman. And he speaks all these different languages, which is really interesting too, because the movie is really about connection and yearning and trying to find a connection. There's a scene where he's half Japanese, I think, and then half maybe Taiwanese or Hong Konger, but he speaks Mandarin, Cantonese, Japanese, and English all in one scene when he's trying to talk to this character, and he can't figure out what language she speaks. And that to me, like, it's such a great little moment, but it speaks volumes to the character and to the theme and world of the film. And I think that's really kind of genius filmmaking. And you see that a lot in all the different characters, but like the quirks they have, and like the thing with the flight attendant and the obvious theme of like, you have both like the emotional theme of like wanting to take flight and go somewhere new and find new love and stuff like that, but also the physical thing of just wanting to like do something different and change your life and be free and stuff like that. So I could go on and on and on about this film, but you know, it does have that literary quality, like I said. Godard and Truffaut, huge influences, but I just think it's a very 90s movie too, and it's a movie that's really searching for intimacy formally. Like, it wants the characters to be close to the camera, and it wants you to feel like you're in the space with the characters and that you know what it's like to be them. And like the voiceover technique of them talking directly to you, and the shots of like the characters lying in bed where you're like right there with them, like you're almost like cuddling with them or something like that. And like, and I think that that's interesting too, because in the 90s you see a lot of these filmmakers like Tarantino, Paul Thomas Anderson, they're looking at like Scorsese and like these very formalized kind of filmmakers with like big widescreen, all this stuff. And Wong Kar-wai and Chris Doyle are really trying to just like put you in there, but there's this very 90s sense of it being very meta, and of like someone who grew up watching films, making films, and referencing all these other films. And so it's very much a movie of its time, but he, in a way, he was very different from his peers too. And I think his films were hugely influential as well. Like some of it kind of really reminds me of Julian Schnabel and like Diving Bell and Butterfly, and then also Before Night Falls, both Days of Being Wild and this one. I see a lot of influence in there. Obviously, Sofia Coppola has talked extensively about how much Wong Kar-wai has influenced her, and there's a lot of other kind of reference points that you can point to films that were clearly influenced by him. But this film really is like a little minor miracle. It is a very beautiful movie, and it's also really interesting to know that he did this as a reaction, essentially, to Ashes of Time. You know, like he went to China, they filmed for like a year in the desert, and that film is very kind of cerebral to me and very distant. It has great moments, but it doesn't feel like a movie that's like really engaged and from the heart and really just like heart on sleeve, like the same way that As Tears Go By was. And it's a very kind of cerebral and emotionally distant movie. And he came back to Hong Kong in 1992, and he fell in love with the city again. And he's like, I'm from here. I know this place. I grew up in Kowloon, and let's just make this like this. I just wanted to make a movie about the love of cinema, why he loved movies, why he loved Hong Kong, and I think it was an incredible success. A lot of people have said how amazing this film is before. You don't need me to go on about it, but it really was like a kind of a revelatory revisiting, and so I was really happy to have done this. My name is Will. This is Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. It's a really long video, and I apologize for that. The movie is Chungking Express from the Wong Kar-wai World of Wong Kar-wai Criterion Collection box set. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.